In the gloom of a mist-shrouded jungle, a lone hunter halts mid-step. His ears catch the distant snap of a twig, a sound out of place among the nocturnal hum. Heart-pounding, he tightens his grip on a flint-tipped spear. Around him, colossal trees loom like silent gods, their twisted roots clawing at the soil. Somewhere in the darkness, a predator is watching. Tonight, as on every night of his life, survival will hinge on his wits, his courage, and the sharpness of his stone blade. This man is a subject of the Imperium of man, though he has never heard of it. He lives on a world forgotten by time, a place where the sky is an endless black tapestry pricked by cold stars, and the ground beneath his feet has never known the treads of a tank or the foundations of a city. On this feral world, there are no great factories pumping smoke to the heavens, no humming power cables or bustling spaceports. There is only the eternal wilderness and the scattered tribes of humans who struggle to claim a small piece of it each day. Welcome to a feral world where humanity's past and future collide in primitive splendor and brutal reality. Feral worlds are humanity's bygone ages made manifest in the 41st millennium. The Administratum categorizes them as full-class planets, a clinical label for the most technologically primitive human societies in the Imperium. In simpler terms, these are worlds where the march of progress halted millennia ago, or perhaps never began. Civilization here has either fallen into ruin or stagnated at a pre-industrial level. Ironically, on a feral world, the concept of progress is as foreign as a cogitator console. It is a life trapped in endless repetition, generation after generation surviving by ancient ways. Tribes hunt and gather as their ancestors did untold thousands of years before, with weapons of wood, stone, and bone. If they have metal at all, it's scavenged from the remnants of a past they no longer understand. Shards of rusted iron or strange alloys hammered into spearheads and knives. Gunpowder, writing, steam power. None of these have touched these societies. Instead, they live under open skies and by primal laws, strength, cunning, and an unwavering will to endure. How does a world fall so far behind the galactic norm? The reasons are as varied as the stars. Some feral worlds were once part of thriving human civilizations, perhaps even boasting cities and industry long ago, until calamity struck. It might have been an apocalyptic war, a planet-wide plague, a nuclear holocaust, or a catastrophic loss of contact during the long age of strife. Cut off from the wider galaxy and left to fend for themselves, the survivors of those dark times slowly forgot the miracles of technology their ancestors once possessed. Over centuries and millennia, knowledge faded into myth. The power generators fell silent, vehicles rusted into immovable hulks, and grand buildings crumbled back into the earth. Humanity on these planets returned to a simpler existence out of sheer necessity. Generation after generation, they relearned how to make fire, how to fashion tools from stone and hide, and how to live off the land that was often poisoned by the very wars or disasters that doomed their forebears. Other feral worlds were never advanced to begin with. Perhaps they were colonized in ancient days by primitive humans carried to the stars during the dark age of technology, or seeded by refugees who landed with little more than the clothes on their backs. In some cases, early human settlers deliberately rejected advanced technology to start anew in an idyllic, rural life, only for their utopian dreams to decay over generations into mere subsistence. Whatever the origin, the result is the same. Isolated from the great achievements of mankind, these populations developed, or regressed, along their own path, often mimicking the Stone Age or Iron Age cultures of Terra's prehistory. To truly understand life on a feral world, one must imagine the daily struggle that its people face. From the moment the pale sun crests the horizon, painting the skies in hues of orange and red, the tribe is on the move. Dawn is not greeted with alarm clocks or morning sirens, only the cries of strange wild birds and the first stirring of the jungle's insects. In a small encampment of thatch huts and animal skin tents, the smell of wood smoke mingles with the damp, earthy air. Children rub sleep from their eyes as elders stoke the embers of last night's fire back to life. The day's work begins immediately and without ceremony, because idleness can mean starvation. A group of lean hunters gather at the edge of the camp, their bodies marked with scars and painted designs that have both practical and ritual meaning. They arm themselves with spears, bows, and stone axes, each weapon carefully maintained, its crafting method passed down through generations. One man tests the tautness of a bowstring made from sinew, while another runs a finger along the edge of an obsidian blade to ensure it's razor sharp. They exchange few words, communicating instead in hand signals and grunts honed by countless hunts together. Before departing, they might pause at a crude totem erected near the camp's boundary, a weathered wooden icon shaped vaguely like an imperial eagle or perhaps the effigy of a local spirit. Each hunter touches it or whispers a hushed prayer for luck and protection, invoking the favor of whatever gods or ancestors they believe watch over them. Then they vanish into the wild. For hours, these hunters will stalk through dense foliage, or trek across windswept plains, or scramble over rocky highlands, depending on what kind of world they call home. Their senses are attuned to their environment in a way few off-worlders could comprehend. Every broken branch is a potential sign of prey. Every bird call might be a warning of a lurking beast or a rival tribe's scouts. They know which berries and roots can sustain the tribe, and which are poisonous, which animal tracks are fresh, and which lead to dangerous predators best avoided. Their lives have been one long lesson in survival, taught by unforgiving nature. In that silent green twilight, danger can explode without warning. Perhaps that distant twig snap the lone hunter heard truly was a stalking beast, a sleek furred predator with eyes glinting yellow in the gloom. It lunges from the undergrowth in a blur of muscle and claws. The hunter has only a heartbeat to react. He sidesteps on instinct as jaws snap where his neck was an instant before. His spear comes up, driving into the creature's flank. A hideous roar splits the air, part pain, part fury. Man and beast crash to the ground in a rolling tangle of limbs and fury, mud smearing over flashing teeth and wide whites of human eyes. The hunter's companions hear the struggle and rush to help, but he is alone in the first desperate moments. He jams his forearm against the creature's throat to hold the snapping maw at bay. With the other hand, he rips a flint dagger from his belt and plunges it again and again into the thing's side. At last, with a shuddering gasp, the beast grows still. Its hot blood mingles with the hunter's own from the gashes on his shoulder. He pushes the carcass off, trembling with adrenaline and relief. Tonight, the tribe will eat well. And around the fire, when he recounts how the gods guided his hand to victory, the children will listen wide-eyed, knowing that someday they too may have to wrestle death in the dark and hope for the same blessing. Back in the camp, others are hard at work as well. Foraging parties, often including women, older children, or any tribespeople not on the hunt, fan out in different directions, seeking edible plants, fruits, or small game. They carry woven baskets or leather slings to haul their findings, knowing every handful of tubers or bundle of berries might make the difference in the lean season. If the world's ecosystem permits, some tribes have learned a rudimentary form of agriculture, scratching plots of earth to grow a hardy root vegetable, for example, or tending scrawny domesticated herd animals. On a savanna-like feral world, one might see a line of nomads driving shaggy, goat-like creatures toward fresh pasture. On an island chain world, fisherfolk paddle dugout canoes into the misty morning sea, casting nets woven from plant fibers in hopes of a meager catch. Whatever the method, the goal is the same: gather enough food to last another day. Daily life on a feral world is a cycle of effort and reward, intimately tied to the natural world. The sun's position in the sky dictates the rhythm of labor. At high noon, under a searing sun, or perhaps twin suns on some distant orbital path, the tribe might rest in whatever shade they can find. Small children nap beside watchful grandparents, and the camp goes quiet save for the crackle of the fire and the buzz of insects. But even rest is tentative. Weapons remain within arm's reach, and one adult always keeps an eye on the surroundings. Predators, both animal and human, have a way of striking when vigilance falters. Feral worlders are intimately attuned to the seasons and cycles of their environment. They know which times of year bring the monsoon rains that turn gentle streams into raging torrents, or when the great herds will cross the plains in their migration. Despite this knowledge, they are still at the mercy of nature's whims. A drought lasting a few months can spell doom for an entire tribe, drying up water holes and driving away game. During such times, gnawing hunger becomes a constant companion. The tribe will chew on leather straps, boil tree bark for any scant nutrients, and pray feverishly for relief. Elders might voluntarily take less food or wander off into the wilderness to lighten the burden on the young, walking in the steps of ancestors who face the same harsh choices. Floods and storms present their own perils. A single typhoon can flatten huts, drown livestock, and scatter families. Afterwards, survivors pick through mud for salvageable belongings and rebuild with whatever hasn't washed away, convinced it was the wrath, or sorrow, of some deity that brought the devastation. Illness, too, can sweep through a camp with terrifying speed. Without advanced medicine, a simple infection or fever can turn fatal. When a mysterious sickness claims loved ones, the tribe's only recourse is to isolate the ill, burn herbs or incense to chase off evil spirits, and rely on the shaman's remedies. Sometimes it works, sometimes not. Every burial mound or cremation pyre is a reminder of how precarious their existence is, and how thin the line between life and death runs on a feral world. As dusk approaches, the hunters trickle back to camp, hopefully with something to show for their efforts. Perhaps it's the carcass of a horned beast slung between two men on a pole, or a brace of small game tied at the waist of a hunter. There are nights when fortune is kind and the tribe feasts on roasted meat, grease dripping from fingers and laughter echoing around the fires. Other times, the hunters return empty-handed, faces grim, and everyone goes to sleep with an ache in their belly. On those nights, the elders reassure the young ones that the Emperor, or whatever name he is known by here, will provide tomorrow, though deep down they all know that only harder hunting or sheer luck will change their fate. In the glow of firelight after supper, if there is any, the tribe's social life unfolds. They have no hololithic entertainments or data slate games, only each other and the rich oral traditions preserved through memory and repetition. Elders with weathered faces and white hair might tell stories to the gathered circle. Some stories are simple tales of past hunts or tribal heroes. Others are mythic legends layered with superstition and the scant fragments of truth passed down from an earlier age. A child listens wide-eyed to a saga of the Sky Warrior who came from beyond the clouds long ago, wielding fire in his hand and thunder in his voice, to save their people from a great beast. Another tale speaks of a time when the moon turned blood red and the dead walked, almost certainly a distorted memory of some ancient war or catastrophe. but now a fireside ghost story. Through these tales, the feral worlders transmit their history, beliefs, and values in a way far more potent than any carved tablet or inked parchment could. Not that most of them have those either. Awe and laughter intermingle as the younger tribesfolk absorb the lore of their ancestors, all beneath a blanket of stars that glimmer overhead like the eyes of gods watching from the firmament. Night on a feral world brings its own set of fears and safeguards. The fires are kept burning bright at the perimeter of the camp, for flame is one of the few defenses the tribe has against whatever beasts prowl the darkness. In the jungle, it might be sleek, silent predators with eyes that shine in the firelight. On the tundra, perhaps packs of howling creatures circling just out of bowshot. In the swamps, enormous scaled things that slither and splash in murky waters. Sentries are posted, usually a rotation of the most alert warriors, who stand guard with spears in hand, peering into the shadows. Sleep comes lightly and never to everyone at once. They've all seen or heard what happens when a camp sleeps unguarded. Come morning, nothing remains but scattered belongings and blood stains. Thus, even in the dead of night, humanity on these worlds clings to wakefulness by the light of a flickering fire, defying the primordial darkness that has ruled since time immemorial. Among these tribes, social structure is straightforward and unforgiving. There is usually a chieftain or headman, sometimes chosen by lineage, other times by sheer strength and reputation. In one tribe, the oldest and wisest elder might gently guide the decisions of the group. In another, a hot-blooded war leader rules with an iron fist, or rather a stone axe. Often it's a mix of both, a council of gray-haired elders advising a younger champion who has proven himself or herself in battle. Leadership is rarely ceremonial. The chief is expected to be the first to face danger and the last to eat during lean times. If a leader shows cowardice or fails to provide for the people, they won't remain leader for long. On a feral world, authority lasts only as long as you can defend it, either with wisdom, charisma, or raw physical might. In the spiritual realm of the tribe, one often finds the shaman or wise woman/man. This figure stands apart from the common hunters and gatherers. They are the keeper of secrets, the healer, and the intermediary between the tribe and the unseen forces they believe shape their lives. Draped in animal skins, perhaps wearing a necklace of carved bones or teeth, the shaman might cast bones or read the patterns of smoke to divine omens. They concoct poultices and herbal brews to treat wounds or sickness, a mix of genuine herbal medicine and ritualistic hocus-pocus. Some of their remedies work: a certain root to reduce fever, a moss that staunches bleeding. Others rely on placebo and hope. Regardless, when someone falls ill or the tribe faces a crisis, a long drought, a failed hunt, an onslaught of predators, it is the shaman who entreats the spirits or gods for aid. On many feral worlds, these spirits are understood by the educated off-worlder to be emperor and the chaos gods under different names, or even residual warp phenomena interpreted through a veil of superstition. But to the tribesfolk, it's all very real and immediate. If the shaman says the river god demands a sacrifice of the largest fish, they obey without question, desperate for the rains to return. Life is tightly knit within the tribe. Every member has a role to play, and there is little patience for those who cannot contribute. The sickly and the weak often face a merciless fate. Some tribes abandon infants born with obvious deformities, believing them cursed. An adult who can't keep up might be left behind when the tribe must move on, or relegated to minor tasks if they're lucky and the tribe is compassionate. It sounds cruel, but on a world where resources are scarce and danger is constant, hard choices become a matter of survival. Yet, paradoxically, the tribe can also be fiercely protective of its own when external threats loom. They may fight tooth and nail to save an injured hunter from a predator, or avenge a slain member with astonishing ferocity. The line between mercy and mercilessness is drawn by the harsh conditions of their existence. Tribes do not exist in isolation, and inevitably they come into contact with others, rarely peacefully. Conflict over territory, resources, or old grudges is a fact of life. Perhaps another tribe has encroached on a sacred hunting ground, or stolen livestock, or simply carries an ancestral feud that no one even remembers the origin of. When diplomacy fails, and on feral worlds, it often does after the first guttural insults are exchanged, violence ensues. Warfare at this level is personal and brutal. Ambushes in the tall grass at dawn, night raids on an enemy village, pitched battles where lines of screaming warriors clash with spear and shield. These are the wars of feral worlds. There are no formal declarations of war, no treaties. Only the raw law of might makes right. Warriors decorate themselves to strike fear into their foes. Faces streaked with ash-white and blood-red war paint, some sporting fearsome wooden masks or the skulls of beasts as helmets. They believe these markings not only intimidate the enemy, but also call upon war spirits to guide their hand. The air fills with the sound of war cries and crude battle horns, perhaps hollow animal horns or drums fashioned from skins. Arrows and slingstones fly. When two sides meet in melee, it is a chaos of hacking blades, bone clubs smashing against hide shields, and muscle straining against muscle in desperate grapples. Those too wounded to flee or fight are shown little mercy. Victors might take grisly trophies, severed heads or ears, necklaces strung with the finger bones of fallen enemies. Some tribes even ritually consume a slain foe's heart or liver, believing they will gain the courage or strength of those they've vanquished. The Imperium's missionaries, when they eventually come, work hard to replace such practices with more acceptable rituals honoring the Emperor. But in the absence of oversight, old ways die hard. Despite the savagery, there can be a code of sorts. Perhaps certain holy days are off-limits for battle due to shared superstition. Or maybe one tribe respects the valor of another's champion enough to negotiate a truce, at least temporarily. In some regions, loosely defined territories become known and respected, a river or a mountain range that marks where one tribe's lands end and another's begin. Trade is not unheard of either. A rare, peaceful meeting might see exchange of goods like salt, flint, furs, or even brides to seal alliances. These exchanges are tense, laden with ceremony to prevent bloodshed. A misinterpreted gesture or an argument over who stands where can quickly spiral into violence. Trust is fragile when every outsider might be a future enemy. Still, in these tentative moments of peace and barter, one can glimpse the faintest seed of civilization trying to sprout in the blood-soaked soil. For all the bloodshed and hardship, there are also moments of celebration and unity. When the tribe has a great success, be it a rich hunt, a victorious battle, or even the birth of an esteemed chief's heir, they mark the occasion with what meager pleasures their world provides. A feast might be declared, consuming in one night what little extra food they have, because in lean times it's better to have a memory of plenty than none at all. They sing around the fire, pounding drums made of stretched hide or clapping hands in rhythm. Dances tell stories of ancestors and heroes, with costumed dancers leaping and spinning in the firelight, casting gigantic shadows on the trees or cave walls. Even the shaman might join in, leading a chant of thanks to the benevolent spirits and the skyfather for smiling upon them that day. In those rare nights of revelry, one can see genuine joy on faces usually furrowed by worry. Children laugh and chase each other between the legs of celebrating warriors. Lovers, formal marriages may not exist in every tribe, but bonds of partnership do form, might exchange tokens, a carved charm or a bracelet of woven grass as a promise to each other. These simple celebrations reinforce the tribe's sense of community and hope. They all know that harsher times will come again, perhaps tomorrow. But for tonight, at least, they can feel the warmth of kinship and imagine that the gods are pleased. Such moments are the glue that holds them together when the spears are broken and the nights are cold. What do these people worship, cut off as they are from the grand shrines and cathedrals of the Imperium? In the absence of technology and scientific understanding, they fill the void with faith and superstition. Everything around them is attributed to a higher power or spirit. The sky, the forest, the sea, the storm, all have their deities or animating forces in the eyes of a feral worlder. But lurking within even their most pagan traditions is often the distant echo of the imperial creed. By the time a feral world is rediscovered or brought into the Imperium's fold, the ecclesiarchy makes certain that the one true faith, worship of the god emperor of mankind, takes root among the tribes. It might not displace their older beliefs entirely, but it will absorb and transform them. To these primitive folk, the emperor is usually interpreted in a way that fits their cultural context. They have never heard of Terra or the Horus heresy or the bejeweled throne that sustains mankind's psychic beacon. Instead, they know a figure often referred to in their tongue as the skyfather, the master of storms, the great light, or any number of epithets that combine power and paternal guardianship. They might point to the sun and say it is his golden eye, watching them by day. In thunder, they hear his anger. In a bountiful hunt, they see his blessing. One tribe might carve a crude likeness of a man on a wooden throne, believing it to be the image of Emperor, their clipped way of saying emperor, who sits in judgment of souls. Another paints a lightning bolt on their shields, claiming it as the symbol of the Father of Lightning who dwells beyond the sky. They are all, unknowingly, worshipping the Emperor in the only ways they can understand. This religious adaptation is often by design. When the Imperium discovers a feral world, the first agents to truly live among the tribes are often missionaries or confessors of the ecclesiarchy. These intrepid or fanatical souls venture into the wild armed with nothing but zeal, a translator device, if available, and perhaps a few technological tricks to awe the locals. They preach that the tribe's greatest deity, be it the Sun Lord or Earth Mother or Storm King, is actually just one facet of the Emperor of mankind, the one true God who watches over all humans. Sometimes they arrive in the guise of holy men performing miracles, using a flamer to spew what the natives see as divine fire, or activating a long-broken water purifier so that it seems they made clean water flow from a poisoned well. By such demonstrations and by syncretizing the imperial creed with local myth, the missionary wins converts. Over years or decades, the tribes begin to incorporate imperial symbols and prayers into their daily life. Maybe they still call the emperor by a local name, but they accept that he is the chief of all spirits, the one who sent the sky people to watch over them. Of course, belief on a feral world is rarely uniform. Some tribes might resist the new teachings, clinging to their old gods or following opportunistic shamans who promise power through darker rites. Chaos has a subtle hold on such worlds too, albeit in nascent forms. A warlord who revels too much in bloodshed might begin to offer blood sacrifices to an angry war god, unwittingly feeding the blood god corn. A coven of isolated shamans might secretly venerate a trickster spirit that promises forbidden knowledge, a likely mask for Tsinch. Without literacy or science, the line between pious worship and demonolatry can be terrifyingly thin. An emerging cult might not even realize they've damned themselves. This is why the Imperium insists on guiding feral world faith toward the Emperor. Better they pray to him in ignorance than accidentally serve the dark gods in ignorance. One common thread is an abhorrence of witchcraft. Almost every primitive culture harbors a fear of those who claim unnatural powers. On these worlds, anyone born with psychic talent, the witches or shamans who can actually tap the warp, is a double-edged sword. They might become a village's revered oracle or healer, but just as easily could be seen as possessed or cursed. It's not uncommon for tribes to kill or exile individuals who exhibit witch sign like strange dreams, unexplained phenomena, or uncanny insights. Paradoxically, this brutal practice aligns with Imperial doctrine. Unsanctioned psychers are a grave danger. Better a latent witch be strangled at birth by a fearful midwife than grow into a gateway for demonic possession. Thus, many feral populations police themselves in this regard, never realizing they're doing exactly what the distant lords of Terra would want them to do. Those witches who do gain acceptance tread a perilous path. They may lead the tribe as mystical seers, but if misfortune strikes, say a failed harvest or an outbreak of disease, they are the first to be blamed. Their end is usually violent, burned at the stake on a pyre of green wood while the tribe chants purification prayers. The smell of charred flesh under a sky of cold stars is a grim but recurrent footnote in the history of feral worlds. High above or far away from the mud and smoke of tribal campfires, the Imperium keeps its watchful eye on the feral world. Officially, every human world in the Imperium has a planetary governor, and feral worlds are no exception. In practice, governing a feral world is like holding the title of king over a kingdom of ants. You have authority on paper, but the subjects themselves scarcely know you exist. Typically, the governor and his staff reside apart from the native population. It could be in a lone fortified settlement on the planet, a small town or base built and staffed by off-world personnel, or even aboard an orbiting station that circles the planet silently, while the tribes below stare up at the moving stars, unaware of the visitors above. This enclave of civilization stands in stark contrast to the world it oversees. Picture an adamantium-reinforced, prefabricated habitat with glowing lumen strips and humming generators, perched perhaps on a mesa or island, encircled by automated defense turrets. Inside, a few dozen administratum clerks, a magistratum officer or two, and a squad of bored PDF troopers go about their routines. Their recaf is hot. Their data slates are filled with endless reports on nothing, and outside their electrified perimeter fence lies an endless wilderness teeming with people who neither know nor care about the bureaucrat's authority. The governor's primary duty is to ensure the Imperium's interests are met with minimal fuss. From a feral world, those interests are usually simple: a modest tithe of resources and manpower, and the assurance that the planet isn't harboring any unpleasant surprises, like a burgeoning chaos cult or a Xenos infestation. The tithe from a feral world is graded among the lowest in the administratum's ledger. In terms of material goods, the planet may supply exotic animal hides, rare woods, or small quantities of minerals if easily obtained, but nothing of great industrial value. The true export is people. A feral world's population being small and dispersed, often numbering only a few 100,000 to a few million souls across the whole globe, doesn't allow for huge regiments in the way of a hive world. But what it does provide are hardy warriors and survivors, perfect for the Imperial Guard and other uses. Thus, the tithe might demand that every so many years, the strongest youths of the tribes are to be given up to serve the wider Imperium. Collecting this tithe is a delicate operation. One method is through cooperation with whatever semblance of local authority exists. Perhaps the governor's envoys have established relationships with certain tribal chiefs, convincing them that it is an honor to send their sons and daughters to the sky to serve the great Skyfather. In this case, an agreement is reached on an appointed day at a holy site or a cleared field. The tribe, or multiple tribes, will present a quota of young warriors. An Imperial shuttle descends with thunderous noise and blinding lights, and the Sky People step forth in gleaming flak armor, issuing commands in the local tongue, or via gestures and tone if language fails. Usually awe and fear keep the exchange orderly. Wide-eyed youths who may have never seen a wheel now behold a gunmetal gray dropship from the stars and men wielding weapons that spit fire. Some think it the chariots of the gods, others believe it a test of the tribal ancestors. Either way, they line up as instructed, clutching simple packs of their belongings and trying not to tremble. Mothers weep quietly. Fathers stand stern, perhaps proud that their child goes to fulfill some grand destiny among the heavens. In truth, the Imperium counts on this mystique to ensure compliance. There are instances when coercion is needed. Not every tribe is willing to part with its best warriors. Occasionally, an especially isolated or defiant group might refuse the tithe or even attack the envoys. The response, while not quite an exterminatus, is inevitably overwhelming force. The governor can call on a squad of well-armed troops or even orbital gunship support to make a swift and terrible example. A few strafing runs from the sky, perhaps, or a single thunderous explosion that annihilates the tribe's warband from a distance. The point is made brutally clear. After that, survivors, if any, are generally far more compliant. Word spreads in whispers around cooking fires that the Skyfather punishes those who defy his heralds. Future tithes proceed more smoothly. Apart from gathering tithes, Imperial oversight on a feral world focuses on containment and monitoring. The Imperium does not expect these worlds to contribute advanced manufactured goods or billions of soldiers, but it does expect them to stay in line and not become breeding grounds for rebellion or witchery. Thus, the governor's mandates include keeping an ear to the ground, often literally via hidden auspex sensors or informants, for any sign of mutation, witchcraft, or deviant cult activity. In plain terms, if a tribe starts worshipping something that isn't the emperor, or if an unusual number of people with extra limbs or glowing eyes pop up in a valley, the governor needs to act fast. Typically, a discreet call is made for specialists. The Inquisition, with its all-seeing gaze, may dispatch an agent to quietly investigate a potential chaos taint posing as mere tribal heresy. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica's black ships might adjust their course to snatch up a cluster of psychers if one tribe's shamanic bloodline suddenly produces too many witches. Many times, it doesn't even get that far. A local ecclesiarchy priest or the governor's own enforcers will handle it. They might venture out under cover of night with a handful of mercenaries and eliminate the problem, be it a charismatic cult leader or a mutant enclave with lass fire and blade, before most natives even realize Imperial agents walked among them. In maintaining this vigilant watch, however, there is a constant risk, the phenomenon the Administratum dubs going native. Feral worlds hold a strange allure to certain souls. Perhaps it's the freedom, the simplicity, or the intoxicating power one can wield over an ignorant populace. Numerous cautionary tales circulate among Imperial bureaucrats about officials who lost themselves on such assignments. One story tells of a junior officer of the Magistratum sent to track mutant births in a highland region. When he failed to report back, a second team was dispatched, only to find that he had shed his flak vest and vox bead and taken up with the very barbarians he was observing. They discovered him painted in woad and blood, leading a chanting warband that believed him a messenger of the gods. Needless to say, his superiors were not amused. The Inquisition had him executed for heresy, and his whole adopted tribe sterilized and relocated as punishment. Another infamous case speaks of a planetary governor who basked in the adulation of a tribe that thought him the avatar of the skyfather. He played along, enjoying life as a living deity among them, until an ecclesiarchy inspection found out. That governor spent the rest of his short life screaming prayers of repentance in an arco-flagellation rig. The moral: no one but the God Emperor is to be worshipped, and no Imperial servant is allowed to forget it. To prevent such temptations, those assigned to feral worlds are carefully screened and periodically rotated out. A cleric who has spent too many years alone converting the heathens will be granted a respite back on a civilized world before his mind frays. A cadre of Adeptus Arbites might be stationed with minimal contact directives. They observe from afar and intervene only when absolutely necessary, so they don't start sympathizing with the locals. Even the routine delivery of supplies and mail from off-world serves to remind isolated staff that they are part of a greater whole, not marooned to start a new life. In many ways, the Imperium treats these postings like one might treat quarantined research stations, essential to check on, but dangerous to linger in too long without reinforcement of proper doctrine. For the feral worlders themselves, being taken into Imperial service is the beginning of a journey both terrifying and transformative. Imagine a young warrior who has never wandered beyond the mountains that encircle his tribe's valley, suddenly thrust into the belly of a void ship piercing the stars. The moment the shuttle's hatch sealed and roared back up into the heavens, he truly left his old life behind. Perhaps he clutched his stone knife or a small totem in his hand as the artificial gravity pressed him into an unfamiliar harness seat. His last glimpse of home was the patchwork of forests and rivers receding below, and then the clouds, and then nothing but the black void speckled with unfamiliar constellations. Many feral conscripts think they have been literally carried to the realm of gods. In a sense, how else to comprehend what's happening? They ride in a chariot of fire and metal beyond the sky, beyond breathable air, into a night that never ends. For some, the experience is overwhelming. Panic attacks, fainting, or dropping to their knees in prayer mid-deck are not uncommon. Imperial personnel, if seasoned, anticipate this. A grizzled commissar might permit a minute of slack-jawed awe before barking at the recruits to stand up straight and remember they are warriors of the Emperor now, not frightened children. The transit to a boot camp or war zone can be lengthy and is its own crucible for these primitive soldiers. During warp travel, even if the journey is mercifully free of incident, the nightmares can be vivid. The warp haunts the human mind subtly, and to someone with no frame of reference, the unsettled feeling can blossom into full terror. Some wake up screaming about demons or ancestral spirits chasing them through an endless night. The ship's chaplains and commissars work double time to keep such fears in check, often by reframing them. Yes, the warp is a hellscape of nightmares. That's why you must hold close your faith in the Emperor, and he will protect you. They teach the feral recruits rudimentary Low Gothic if they don't already know it, drilling simple phrases and commands. Military instruction is conducted in the most straightforward way: physical demonstrations and repetition. These people aren't stupid by any means, but they lack any context for machines or advanced weapons, so training must start from ground zero. Picture a makeshift firing range in a ship's hangar bay or a distant Imperial depot. A line of former tribe warriors stands behind unfamiliar weapons, Law's guns, trying to follow an instructor's example. When the guns first crack and the air hums with searing light, a few recruits flinch in surprise. They blink against the brilliance and the heat blooming from their weapons. It astonishes them that such light born from these unassuming lengths of metal can cut down a man across the field in a heartbeat. In their minds, a gun is not a tool, but a kind of minor thunderbolt harnessed by humans. They give it the respect one gives a live serpent. Some even murmur charms to the machine spirit of the last gun. And the instructor does not correct this, since even Imperial doctrine encourages reverence for the machine. Over time, the yelps turn to whoops of excitement as they gain confidence. Firing a gun can be exhilarating to someone who has spent life with bow and spear. They begin to see it as a new kind of bow, one that needs no muscle to draw and can kill without the arc of a visible arrow. A few naturally talented marksmen emerge, perhaps owing to good eyesight and years of shooting prey. Others remain poor shots but show enthusiasm for closing in with bayonet or knife, where they feel more in their element. Discipline is another hurdle. Feral worlders are used to following their chief or shaman, but the concept of a massive, faceless authority, like the Astra Militarum, is hard to grasp. Early on, many view their immediate commanding officer as just a new tribal chief figure, which, to be fair, is often an accurate parallel. If that officer earns their respect by displays of strength or courage, they become loyal, even fanatically so. But if they sense weakness or cowardice, old habits of challenge can resurface. There are anecdotes of feral recruits trying to duel their sergeants or refusing orders they found dishonorable. The commissariat deals with such incidents harshly and swiftly. A last pistol execution of a disobedient recruit in front of his peers sends a clear, if brutal, message that the rules of this new tribe are absolute and enforced by death. Those who survive the indoctrination become true Imperial guardsmen, often among the toughest and most fearless. Once deployed into real combat, the feral worlders at last find themselves on somewhat familiar footing, ironically. War, after all, was nothing new to them. It is just the scale and the tools that have changed. A charging orc horde might as well be an onrushing enemy tribe, except these foes are green-skinned giants and carry roaring chain axes. A hive city under siege with its shattered hablocks and burning streets is like a twisted echo of the jungle clearings or canyon battlefields they knew, only magnified. The feral world regiments often develop reputations as ferocious shock troops or stubborn defenders. Their innate survival instincts and high tolerance for pain and hardship mean they can endure grueling campaigns that might break other soldiers. Marching for days with little food, living off the land, or holding a trench in freezing sleet. Such trials are not so far removed from surviving a week in the mountains back home on a vision quest. Where they sometimes falter is in the face of extremely abstract or high-tech warfare. They aren't the best at complex tactical maneuvers involving vehicles or cogitator-driven artillery coordination. But if you need someone to fix bayonets and storm an enemy-held ruin at night, howling war cries and utterly unafraid of the dark, look no further than the feral worlders. In their downtime behind the lines, if they get any, they remain a bit of an oddity in the guard camps. They might squat by a fire cooking up local critters they caught, to the amusement and horror of more genteel comrades, or adorn their flak armor with the feathers and teeth of slain enemies. They keep to their superstitions. You'll see some painting ritual markings on their armor before battle, or hear them whisper prayers not just to the Emperor, but to the spirits of their home world to watch over them. Officers may tolerate these quirks as long as they don't interfere with duties. In fact, Many encourage it, seeing it as part of what makes them effective fighters. A squad that truly believes its ancestral totems make them invincible might just fight like they are. Woe to the enemy who faces such men and women in close combat. More than one heretic or Xenos has underestimated a primitive warrior only to have their skull split by an axe blow or their body tackled into a mud pit and knifed repeatedly. Over time, the survivors among these feral conscripts do acclimate to the greater Imperium. They learn more of the common tongue, perhaps pick up rudiments of Imperial culture, though many aspects of it remain baffling or even distasteful, such as the concept of vast cities where millions live piled atop each other. To a man from the plains, that's as alien as the Eldar. A rare few even rise through the ranks, maybe becoming a sergeant respected by his men for uncanny fieldcraft or fearless leadership. Their background matters less than their deeds once they've proven themselves. Stories exist of feral worlders being seconded to inquisitors for special missions, using their tracking skills or primal courage in service of more clandestine operations. It's a long road from chasing game in a forest with a spear to hunting a genestealer through the underhive of a foreign world with a plasma gun. But it's a road some have walked, to the astonishment of those who once called them savages. Even more dramatic than being conscripted into the Imperial Guard is the fate that awaits a rare few feral worlders, recruitment into the Adeptus Astartes. The Space Marines, legendary angels of death, often prefer their recruits to hail from deadly environments where only the hardiest survive. Feral worlds are prime hunting grounds for such potential heroes. From the perspective of the tribespeople, this process is nothing short of divine intervention. On certain nights, or perhaps at the zenith of a particular star alignment, the legends say the sky will open. Great winged figures descend wreathed in light and thunder. In truth, drop pods or gunships carry space marines to the surface, but the distinction is academic to those watching from below, mouths agape. Often, a chapter will coordinate with the world's imperial overseers for a grand convergence. An announcement might be made by the tribal elders, themselves guided by a missionary or imperial agent, that a sacred contest or trial is to be held. Every tribe is invited to send their bravest youths. It might be a tournament of combat, a race across perilous terrain, or a great hunt of some monstrous apex predator. The specifics vary, but the intent is the same: to test who among the new generation possesses the physical prowess, courage, and perhaps a spark of something exceptional needed to become Astartes. The trials are often brutal. Dozens might begin, only a handful finish. Imagine a gauntlet where young warriors must run for miles carrying heavy stones, then swim a freezing river, then engage in sparring matches atop narrow poles over a pit. In some cases, aspirants must survive in the wilderness alone for a week and return with the pelt of a deadly beast to prove their resourcefulness. Many die attempting these feats, seen by their people as valiant sacrifices to the gods. Those who endure until the end find towering giants in ceramite power armor waiting for them. These space marines, or sometimes veteran sergeants without helmets to appear a bit more human, size up the victors. Perhaps they administer one final test. One known example is a deadly duel where the aspirant must land a blow on a fully armored Astartes, an almost impossible task, but even the attempt, if done cleverly and bravely, can impress the judges. At last, the chosen are marked, perhaps with a hand on the shoulder or a drop of the chapter master's blood on the tongue in an old ritual, and told they are found worthy. For the tribe, this is a moment of mingled sorrow and ecstatic pride. Their finest son or daughter. Some chapters do take female aspirants before gene seed sorting, or the tribe may not realize the difference if the Astartes program is male only, is leaving forever. There will be singing and chanting as the Blessed One walks into the light of the sky warrior's craft. To them, that youth is effectively undergoing apotheosis, becoming one of the Emperor's angels. They likely will never see him again, but they take comfort in believing he will watch over them from the heavens. In some chapters' practices, a newly inducted Marine, once fully transformed and years seasoned, might return to his home world for recruitment duties or in the course of war. How surreal it must be for a space marine to revisit the hovel he was born in, looking down at people he once knew, who now gaze up at him like a stranger, a giant clad in sacred armor. He cannot truly go home again. He's something more than human now, an instrument of the Emperor's will across the stars. In the halls of the Chapter Fortress Monastery, the feral world aspirants join others taken from different worlds or tribes. The process of becoming a space marine is harrowing. Surgeries to implant gene seed organs, hypno-conditioning to indoctrinate them, and training that makes the prior tribal trials look gentle. Not all will survive to wear the power armor. Those who do, however, emerge as transhuman demigods. Interestingly, the cultural imprint of their upbringing is often not erased, but rather woven into the chapter's culture. A chapter that recruits heavily from a single feral world may adopt that world's aesthetics and totems. Power armor might be adorned with fur pelts, fangs, or tribal markings in honor of traditions that go back to the recruit's primitive life. The space wolves of Fenris are a famous example. Savage tribesmen turned Astartes who still drink ale from horns and sing warrior sagas. The White Scars, once steppe nomads, ride into battle on bikes as if they were their old horses, sporting tribal tattoos and ritually scarred faces. These are extreme examples, but in general, a Space Marine chapter values the spirit that made a feral world kid survive to join their ranks, and they cultivate it alongside the discipline of Adeptus Astartes. From the feral worlder's perspective who becomes Astartes, the galaxy suddenly opens up in a way few of his kin could imagine. He gains knowledge and experiences beyond comprehension, setting foot on dozens of worlds, fighting aliens he has no mythic reference for. What legend on his homeworld prepared him to slay a tyrannid bio-horror or a traitor marine of the Iron Warriors? And eventually understanding the true scope of human civilization and the Emperor's dream. Yet, in the quiet moments between battles, he might still whisper the prayer his mother taught him as a child around the cooking fire, or rub a small charm he keeps inside his armor, a tooth from that first beast he killed in the trials, perhaps. In the Brotherhood of Space Marines, those small vestiges of his origin are cherished privately as a reminder of where he came from and what forged his courage in the first place. In this way, the Imperium's greatest warriors carry a spark of the feral world within them. It is a strange thought. The fate of star-spanning battles and alien crusades can rest on the shoulders of someone who, a few years prior, was stalking wild boar with a flint spear in a backwater jungle. But such is the Emperor's design, that from the most humble and barbaric of origins, the mightiest of mankind's defenders can spring. There is no single template for a feral world. The galaxy holds an endless tapestry of such planets, each a unique theater of humanity's struggle. On one world, ice and snow might cover everything in eternal winter, and human clans migrate after herds of shaggy megafauna across frozen tundra. Fenris, the death world home of the space wolves, was like this, its people hardened by frost and fangs. On another, desert nomads roam between oasis and canyon, following the stars above the dunes. The riders of Attila's steppes come to mind, primitive horse lords who became the famed rough riders of the Imperial Guard. There are jungle-choked feral worlds where cannibal warriors navigate by the canopy, and each step on the ground risks the strike of a venomous reptile or the snare of a carnivorous plant. Cretaceous, The Flesh-Tearers chapter's home is one such savage garden of horrors. Some feral worlds exist amid the ruins of what once was. Tribes might camp in the shadow of crumbling hives or shattered domes, telling ghost stories of the ancient ones who built those cyclopean structures. Others have no such echoes of the past, having never progressed beyond mud huts and campfires since time immemorial. Yet, in all this variety, common themes emerge. Life is unforgiving. Knowledge is sparse and often wrong. Courage and strength are the currency of respect. Faith, no matter how distorted or locally flavored, keeps communities bound together against the terrifying unknowns of their world. The Imperium, for all its might, cannot possibly drag these worlds into modernity, and indeed it has little interest in doing so. Instead, it uses them, preserves them in their primal state as a resource. They are islands of the past adrift in a sea of stars, places where you could believe you had stepped through a portal to old Earth's prehistory, until a dropship scorches the sky or a bolter round crashes through the trees, reminding everyone that they are, in fact, part of a galactic empire, however little they know of it. As we conclude this journey through the smoke and shadows of the Imperium's feral worlds, a few stark truths emerge. In these places, life is short, violent, and hungry. Ignorance is not just bliss, it's the only option. And yet, within that ignorance lies a kind of strength. The people of a feral world do not quail at the thought of terrifying aliens or the endless void. They scarcely know those exist. Their nightmares are the tiger in the brush, the ghost in the cave, the rival warrior's blade. What they understand is simple: fight, endure, believe. In a galaxy gone mad with complexity, that simplicity can be a weapon in itself. They embody humanity at its most raw and unfiltered, for better and worse. And truth be told, their worldview, while primitive, is not so different from the billions of other Imperial citizens who live and die by dogma and ritual. A tribesman may believe the thunder is a roar of an angry spirit, while a hive city worker believes the machine's rumble is the voice of its machine god. In the end, both men are fumbling in the dark of ignorance, doing as they must to make sense of a frightening universe. The Imperium, in its grim pragmatism, cherishes and exploits this. It plucks the best of these worlds to become the tip of its spears and the edge of its swords. It shields these populations from knowledge that would shatter them, even as it throws them into wars beyond their comprehension. One might find it cruel, an undeniable tragedy for those individuals who will never truly know why they fight and die on some distant planet light years from the forests of their birth. But such is the way of the 41st millennium. Countless trillions of human lives, each with their own little spark of hope or fear, ground in the gears of a war machine that must never stop. Feral worlders are perhaps lucky in one sense. They die with the same clear purpose they lived for, protecting their kin, even if the definition of kin has expanded to all mankind, and honoring their god, even if now called Emperor of Man. They do not overthink the grand strategies or question the meaning of empire. They just fight, as they always have. In the final analysis, life on an imperial feral world is a study in extremes. Primitive ignorance and cosmic truth, side by side, the lowest technology serving the highest cause, the cruelty of nature pressed into the service of an even crueler civilization. A man born in mud and rain might live believing the stars are the fires of his ancestors. He might die on a metal battlefield under an alien sun, never realizing he himself became one of the very stars, one of the tiny lights of humanity pushing back against the encroaching darkness. There is profound tragedy and glory in that. Such is the fate of those who live on feral worlds, to be both the most humble of the Emperor's subjects and, when duty calls, his fiercest warriors. In the end, despite all their ignorance, they prove that the spirit of mankind, unyielding, ferocious, and faithful, burns just as hot in a crude village hearth as it does in the grandest hive city or the mightiest battleship. And in the grim darkness of the far future, that may be the very spark that saves us all.